very good afternoon, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to our interview this week. And let me introduce myself. I am Tonlina Zaparat and will be the moderator for today's discussion. And this week we will touch on the topic regarding the Japan's new national security strategy that we will focus on the implications to the region and beyond. And we are very honored to have Dr. Thida Chanthima here, a research fellow at the Mekong Center for Strategic Study of the Asian Mission Institute, as our guest speaker for today's discussion. So greeting Dr. Chanthima and warmly welcome back to our interview program.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
And without further ado, I would like to kick off our discussion. So as we all know that Japan has just unveiled its new strategy on the national security on 16 December 2022 under the administration of Prime Minister Fumio Kishida. So first of all, to expand the understanding on the topic, would you kindly briefly and explain on the definition of Japan national security strategy and how is it vital to Japan national and defense sector as well as the region?
Thank you for that question. As you mentioned, as we know, on the 16th of December 2022, Japan has unveiled a new national security and defense strategy, signaling one of the largest military buildups since World War II, in order to arguably navigate the country's response to significant changes in the regional and global security environment, which includes Russia's invasion of Ukraine and reflects on Japan's growing sense of vulnerability with its immediate neighbor. As part of this new security strategy, Japan has approved 3 new documents: the National Security Strategy, the National Defense Program Guidelines, and the Midterm Defense Program, which provides the highest level of strategic guidance for diplomacy, defense, economic security, technology, cyber, and intelligence over the next decade. This new national security strategy is essentially an update to the first one, which was formulated in 2013. Through this new national security strategy, the Japanese government has listed 3 main sections on national interests, as well as plans as to how to tackle new and emerging threats to its security and the regional security.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Chanthima. As you mentioned that this new national security strategy of Japan will be the largest military buildup since World War II and after the first one, and it will serve as the to be as the response to the significant change in the regional and global security environment. So what are the significant changes to this new national security strategy of Japan? And could you explain how this will reflect on the future of Japan national security and defense field and beyond?
Yes, so as I mentioned, in order to tackle these new security threats to Japan and the region, the Japanese security strategy listed out a few elements in order to do so, which includes to boost its diplomatic capacity, its defense capacity as well. What stood out was the first thing that it highlighted in the new security strategy is that it had stated the U.S. as an indispensable role, not only for the peace and security for the region, but for the international community as well. Japan has vowed to further strengthen their bilateral coordination in all areas, including diplomacy, defense, and economy. Furthermore, in order to boost diplomatic capacity, the new security strategy will also promote Japan to cooperate more with like-minded allies, such as the Quad, the Republic of Korea, Canada, ASEAN and its member states, NATO, EU, and others. But what stood out the most was the new addition to its defense capability, which is the authorization of the counter-strike capabilities to boost its defense and deterrence from enemies' arms tech. Theoretically, this enables Japan to mount effective counterstrikes by firing into enemy's bases to prevent further attacks, while defending against incoming missiles by means of longer-range defense network. However, critics have called that this is a major shift of Japan's pacifist policy, and that this could infringe upon the Article 9 of the Japanese Constitution. However, in response to that, the Prime Minister stressed that although this is a major shift from its post-war security policy, Japan's path as a peaceful nation will remain unchanged, and that this new addition is within the scope of the Japanese Constitution by meeting the three conditions for the use of force, which is first, an armed attack has occurred or is imminent. Second, no other option to halt the attack. And third, that the use of force is limited to the minimum necessary. The other notable thing of this new security strategy is that Japan has also announced that it will increase its defense spending budget from the traditional 1% to 2% of its GDP, which is equivalent to $314 billion US dollars in the course of 2023 to 2027. This will allow Japan to acquire many standoff missiles that can be used for the counter strikes, which includes US-made Tomahawk cruise missiles. This is essentially equivalent to NATO standards of defense spending. However, this was met with disapproval from the Japanese citizens, because in order to meet this increase in the defense budget, the Japanese government will have to increase tax as well. What this means for the region, it depends on which perspective that you're looking at. The United States, although it is not in the region, it is a very big and important player in the region. And to them, they've met this change in Japanese security strategy with nothing but praises. That according to U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, he stated that that Japanese decision to acquire counter-strike capabilities will modernize and strengthen the U.S. and Japan's alliance. Furthermore, although we have had no official response from NATO and EU, but this Japanese new security strategy is very similar to EU security strategy and NATO's as well, especially in regards to naming China as its biggest strategic challenge and the increase in investment. Again, as I've mentioned, what this means for the region is what perspective we're looking at. As I said, from the US, they're looking at this as a positive development. However, on the other hand, if we are looking at it from China's perspective, China has met this with two-pronged responses. First, it stated that by the Japanese saying such thing within documents, they severely distorts the fact, violates the principle and spirit of the four China-Japan political documents, wantonly hypes the China threat, and provokes regional tension and confrontation. And China also met this development by sending a 6-ship flotilla led by its Liaoning aircraft carrier into the Pacific Ocean after transitioning the Miyako Strait between Okinawa main island and Miyako Island. Similarly, Russia has also accused Japan of abandoning its decades of pacifist foreign policy, and it has stated that this is a frank rejection by the Kishida's administration of the peaceful development of the country, which was persistently declared by previous generations of politicians, and a return to the rails of unbridled militarization. The most critical response was from North Korea, in which it stated that the foolish act of Japan seeking to gratify its black-hearted intention arms build up for re-invasion under the pretext of Japan's legitimate exercise of the right to self-defense can never be justified and tolerated. But again, with if we are looking at this from other perspectives, such as ASEAN perspective of this development, as part of boosting its diplomatic capacity, Japan has also vowed to strengthen its cooperation with allies partner, which, as I've mentioned, that includes ASEAN through bilateral and multilateral dialogues, bilateral trainings and exercises, joint developments of defense equipment, transfer of defense equipment and technology, capacity building support, and strategic communication. This, of course, is very beneficial for developing countries such as Cambodia, that we could take advantage of the Japanese willingness to boost our cooperation. So again, to answer your question in short, what this means for the region, it depends on which actor that we are looking at. However, with this development on a bigger picture, but on a more negative side of the picture, is that with this military buildup, unfortunately, it also could mean that it encourages a new arms race in the region, and that it could stoke more tension than it already has now, especially in regards to responses from Russia and China.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Chanthima, for an interesting answer to the transformation strategy of the new national security of Japan. One interesting spotlight of these changes under the Kishida administration, his government has pledged to increase spending and expand different capabilities. And meanwhile, the new national security strategy provide the highest level of strategic guidelines, like you said, for defense and security ahead of decades. And plus, we also have seen a number of commentators discuss on the new strategy from the viewpoint of the party of Japan's pacifist constitution. So in this regard, does it mean that Japan is now giving up the so-called pacifism?
Yes, again, that answer depends on who you ask. According to the Prime Minister Kishida's administration, he insisted that they are still within the constitution, the pacifist post-World War II constitution, that this is merely an update to face new and emerging threats and challenges to the regional and international community. However, actors such as China and North Korea, they see this as a move away from the Japanese traditional pacifist foreign policy.
So to some extent, do you think that this transformation of the national security strategy would perfect it for Japan cooperation on security defense sector with its regional allies in softening the intensification of great powers competition across the region as well as the world?
Yes, so if we are looking at this from the Japanese allies' point of view, again, the U.S. would look at this as a positive development into this intensifying U.S.-China rivalry. Again, China would look at this as a provocation. As for other countries in the region, such as ASEAN and ASEAN countries, this could be a good thing for us. Like I've mentioned, that with the Japanese willingness to boost our cooperation, it could mean that the smaller countries could lessen their dependency on either the US or China, that there is another country that they could cooperate with. However, if you look at it closer, to an extent, Japanese new security policy is not that independent, as in it looks like it is being influenced by the US and its allies. As I've mentioned, it is very similar to EU and NATO's security strategy. And again, so this could mean for the region that the US is just increasing its hands and its involvement in the region, which might not be a great thing for this rivalry between US and China. But of course, we will keep a closer look at this development and see where it goes. At the same time, the U.S. Internal politics might play a part in this as well. As for now, Biden has met this with positive reaction, as I have mentioned, but we are not sure what's coming with the next election. There might be a change in presidency, and the U.S. might have a different opinion regarding this development of the Japanese new security strategy.
So yes, thank you, Dr. Chanthima. So far we've touched upon a lot on the development of the Japan's new national security strategy and also the future relation as well as the prospect from the international community, particularly the neighbor countries to this transformation. And last but not least, do you see any possible implications of this new security strategy of Japan towards the Indo-Pacific?
At the initial impact of this security strategy, in my opinion, for the Indo-Pacific region is not as positive as they had hoped, in regard, especially due to the responses from China and North Korea as well. So I am suspicious and anxious that this, in my opinion, that this will encourage a new arms race between those countries that will stoke more tension than it already has in the region.
So thank you so much, Dr. Chanthima. Ladies and gentlemen, due to our time constraint, I would like to end the interview for today's here. And once again, I would like to pay my sincere appreciation to Dr. Thida Chanthima for your valuable time and your kind contribution joining us today to provide a very profound discussion and a comprehensive view on the topic regarding the new transformation of the Japan national security strategy amid the significant changes in the regional and global security environment.
Thank you for having me.
Yep. So thank you again for joining us, and I look forward to speaking with you again on the future episode for our program. Please stay safe and have a nice day.
Thank you, and Happy New Year to you.
Yes, Happy New Year.